I would like to welcome Bergur Finnbogason, who is the creative director of CCP Games and art manager of EVE Online. He will introduce us to ProtoDiscovery, which is a citizen science project and minigame within EVE Online. Hello, Bergur. Let's play.
Yeah, let's play. Thank you for having me. Super excited to share some stuff about ProtoDiscovery with you guys. Do you guys see my screen?
We can see you. You can start.
Fantastic, thank you.
Enjoy.
So, hello all. My name is Bergur Finnbogason, people call me Bergur like hamburgers, and I'm the creative director of EVE Online. And I want to tell you about the project that we're running in EVE Online called ProtoDiscovery, where we're basically bringing citizen science 21,000 years into the future. So for those of you who don't know EVE Online is a single-shard, massively multiplayer online game where hundreds of thousands of players fight over power, wealth, and fame. In EVE, players decide their own fate and tell their own stories. EVE Online has been going on since 2003, making us one of the oldest actively developed, massively multiplayer online games out there. And we have hundreds of thousands of people that play the game every month and millions of people that have tried the game over the last 17 and a half years. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Attila, from a Swiss company called MMOS, came with us with this really interesting challenge. So in the world of science, there are a lot of problems that scientists need to spend a lot of time actually solving data issues that are just a little bit too complex for algorithms to solve and need a human input. The problem with the big problem here is that usually these data sets are massive. They're huge, and we're not really using scientists, efficiently when focusing on these projects. They usually just need a lot of time. And this is where the topic of citizen science comes in. So basically, you take big scientific problems and you break them down into, and you distribute them among massive amount of people. And when certain amount of people reach the same conclusion, we can say with some certainty that we've reached a consensus on a solution. Citizen science is nothing new, and citizen science is actually something that's been around for a while. But one of the big problems that many citizen science portals are facing is retention. You have a lot of people coming in at the beginning. You have a lot of people coming in and doing, a couple of tasks, but they never return. And this is something where games, especially MMOs, this is something that we have really mastered, this art of retention and the art of keeping people around. So the idea of MMOS was basically, how can we bridge these two gaps? How can we join the good things of the MMO world with the fantastic and the important work that happens in citizen science? So this happened in 2015, 16, and now we're here 5 years later, and I want to tell you a little bit about this story. But to start with, I kind of want to go a little bit into why we decided to take on this project. This is a super scary thing. This is like trusting external partners with providing content and things like that. But we've gone through the hoops, so it's not as scary as you think. So the initial reason why we decided to take on this project was science. I mean, we make a space science fiction game. We're all huge science nerds at CCP, and this just sounded like a really exciting thing to take on. For me personally, my first touch point with citizen science was this project here. This is a screenshot from like 1999. This is SETI at Home, and this is a project where me and my best friend, we spent hours looking at SETI at home. This is we were basically this is a project where like there were some sound waves from space that needed to be analyzed, and someone got the brilliant idea of using downtime of all the computers in the world to actually analyze these audio waves coming in. Me and my best friend, we actually sat there and we theorized around aliens. We played XCOM Apocalypse to prepare for the invasion. We created massive stories around looking at this slow graph going from left to right. The next reason why we decided to take this on is that this is a super interesting game design challenge. Working with scientists, working with scientific data, actually gamifying it, this just sounds kind of impossible. And if it sounds impossible, then we should definitely try to do it. And ultimately, we believe that this is a step, a first step towards something way bigger, to make the work that not saying that our work is not meaningful. Making games is actually a very meaningful thing. But this takes it to a whole new level. So how in the world do you integrate science into already an established IP? When we started, there were a lot of unknowns, everything from tech to legal issues, and how we were going to kind of build this kind of world around this. But we decided on 4 core design principles to guide us through on this journey. The first one was that data that we selected had to have some real world purpose of altruistic nature. So this means less, airstrike, target, something, and more trying to help, find cure for cancer or map human proteins. The second point is that the data had to be aesthetically fitting and easily adaptable to fit the universe. So we don't want pictures of giraffes or street signs. We would much rather like to have something where we can actually fold, the data into the fabric of space, because we have a contract with our players that we don't want to break immersion once you go into EVE Online. The third point is that each task needs to take consistent length of time to solve. This is really important when it comes to retention. It's really important that once you open a new feature, once you open up ProtoDiscovery, you need to know how much time you're about to invest. Is it going to be 2 minutes? Is it going to be 20 minutes? So we need to make sure that we didn't pick tasks that one task would take 2 seconds and the next one would be 30 minutes, because then the cognitive overload of choosing this content over else becomes too difficult. And the fourth point is that the research requires a high volume of tasks. EVE Online players are a dedicated bunch, and they it doesn't matter how big or complex the problem is you put in front of them. If you if it's not enough tasks, they will just churn through it extremely quickly and just go to the next thing. Which brings us to the first project that we actually took a look at. So the initial project we looked at were these little wonderful guys. These are microscopic images of proteins coming from the subcellular human atlas that is controlled and operated by a company or an institute called Human Protein Atlas in Sweden. And what we helped Human Protein Atlas to do was to map the subcellular protein atlas in humans. This project was a great starting project because it's relatively contained, it's relatively simple to grasp, even if there is a lot of complexity. And it was fairly easy to thematically fit it into the game. We worked this project with MMOS and Human Protein Atlas in Sweden, and also with Reykjavik University in Iceland, where we actually built a mini game within EVE Online. But thematically, what is actually happening, to ground the game to ground this effort in the world, is that the Sisters of Eve Research Consortium in EVE are were researching tissue samples of the mysterious drifters in game. And under the guidance of Professor Lundberg, the head scientist of Sisters of Eve, funny story, the head scientist of Human Protein Atlas is Emma Lundberg, that kind of looks like this, so we're kind of playing with tying things back and forth. She called upon capsuleers of New Eden to take part in solving this scientific challenge through ProtoDiscovery. This initial protein set that we got had around 250,000 samples. We felt it was a really good starting point. Initially, we thought this would take between 2 or 3 months for the data set to reach full consensus. But when EVE players actually got into it, they managed to solve the data set in 3 weeks. And over the course of the year that this project ran, we actually reached full consensus on the project 7 times. And what was really great by doing that is that we could, every time we reached the consensus, we could adjust the interface and we could tweak the parameters to actually see if we could get healthier results or better results, or how we could improve this feature even further. What happened then is that all this incredible amount of data that was gathered, I think if my memory serves me right, it was around 23 million submissions done by players. We took all that, or the scientists took all that data, and they actually plugged it into a neural network and they built an algorithm that can now do this procedurally. So before they had to use PhD students or scientists to actually do these analyses. But because of the effort that the EVE players put in, now we actually have an algorithm that does this automatically, which is absolutely fantastic. We learned a lot in this first project. And after a year, we decided to move to the next project. And this was kind of, one of the holy grail projects we always wanted to take on. We actually collaborated with University of Geneva in helping them on the hunt for exoplanets. So exoplanet is a planet that orbits a star. Each star that you see in the night sky is actually a sun. So this project is all about going out and trying to find these exoplanets, these planets that are orbiting other stars. For this project was actually headed by Professor Mayer in EVE Online terms, but he is a representation of Michel Mayer, the Nobel laureate Michel Mayer, who headed the astrophysicist department at the University of Geneva. Here we basically, in the lore of EVE, there were big controversies with Sisters of EVE researching the drifters, and some of the things that came out of the research on drifters were actually a thing called clone state alpha. In real world terms, that means if you can now play the game for free, or there's a free to play clone state for your capsuleer. This created a lot of controversy in the universe. So Concord, the space police, took over ProtoDiscovery and put their head scientist, Professor Mayer, onto this project. So how did this project actually work? So finding exoplanets is a really poetic thing. So what happens is that a telescope is pointed at a star, and the telescope just sits there and it picks up the amount of light that's emitted from the star. And every now and then you might get a planet that goes between you, the telescope, and the star, creating a dip in the light curve. This data is it's relatively easy to find if you have a single star. It's quite easy to see a dip if there's just a single thing, as you can see on the screen here. But the problem becomes a real big problem when you start to get multiple stars, or you start to get some interesting stellar activities that morph the light, or you have binary stars and things like this. And this is where the human eye beats the AI. And this is really where it became a complex challenge for the scientists to find this data. So ProtoDiscovery, how does that, can this work? So we built this beautiful interface here that allows people to take a look at this graph that comes out of the telescope, this light data. And players can basically pick and they can find where these light dips or these transits happen. We actually, because we're building a game, we use a lot of, gamification, and we try to make it exciting and engaging for players to do these things when they're picking and detrending and folding the line on top of each other. And what's actually interesting here is that because we went through the pain of, or the joy of gamifying these things, this actually opened up a lot of new avenues for the scientists. For instance, Human Protein Atlas, they really changed their tools after seeing how we approach the project. But for the exoplanets, we of course add things, and for the old projects, we of course add things like awards and things like that to really, make the experience rich. The really, really, really challenging part, here we go, is the fact that there are extremely few exoplanets out there. So out of I think we had the initial data set we had was around 300,000 stars that we had data from around 300,000 stars. And the guesstimate was that we had somewhere between 6 and 12 exoplanets maximum. So the game becomes a lot about looking for a needle in a haystack. So how do you build a great, engaging, fun game about finding nothing, about basically saying no transit? And this was one of the really, really fun and exciting game design challenges. This is what we call at CCP a 3-bear problem. How do you make a game about finding nothing? This then, so this project ran for just over 2 years, and we actually did a lot of submissions. Our players really loved this project, and we did a lot of submissions for that are now being analyzed by University of Geneva. The tricky thing about finding exoplanets is that the only way to validate the findings is to actually get a bigger telescope and point it to the star that is being analyzed. And you can't really speed up, the transit time. If the transit time is 90 days, then you need to wait 90 days to see a transit. And you need to get multiple transits to actually validate the data. So in some cases, we might have to wait 5, 10, 15 years for proper results. But the initial results are really exciting. And it seems like, some really interesting things have been found. Which brings us to this year. So it probably hasn't passed anyone's attention that the world has been in somewhat of a lockdown during 2020 due to the COVID crisis. And at the beginning of the year, Iceland got affected quite dramatically quite early on. We're a really small country, and usually, things when dramatic things happen in the world, they happen at super speed in Iceland. So during a lockdown in Iceland in February, late February or beginning of March, we reached out to MMOS to see if there was any possibility for us to help out with the COVID crisis, and if there's any opportunity for ProtoDiscovery to actually benefit, be of use for the greater community. We basically just threw this question into the cosmos, and we actually got overwhelming, fantastic responses back. So we teamed up with McGill University in Alberta and the University of Modena in northern Italy, and a few other really, really, really fantastic research institutes around the world. This is probably the most broad project we've done in terms of collaboration. But initially, yes, through McGill University and the University of Modena, we got a really, really, really fantastic data set from northern Italy, which was hit probably was one of the first areas to be hit really hard by Corona. Andrea, who you see here in the center, who actually became the face of this project. He was actually working out of his own garage in a very makeshift laboratory that him and the university had set up in his garage to basically push on and really learn, study this pandemic or this virus. And the technology that they're using is something called flow cytonomy. And I'm not a scientist, so I'm probably like, I'm not the best to describe what it is. But basically what we're looking at is we're looking at how the virus is affecting the immune system. And to get this information, there is a really interesting tool called flow cytometer. I can never say this word that is used to basically see to measure this effect. And it's done with lasers and optical systems and really interesting, cool things. This is one of our game systems designer, UX designer, and the UI designer trying to grasp what in the world is happening and describe it to our players. So we also benefit a lot from doing these projects because we just expand our horizon. So what is actually happening in this project? So we get this really interesting data of, these are basically clusters of proteins and how they affect the immune system. And what needs to be done is that we ask the players to actually mark the different clusters of on these samples. So these can be relatively simple, from just marking these groups of clusters. They submit it, it's analyzed, and we give them an accuracy. And this is probably a simpler one. And here you can see that what was picked is around 85% accurate compared to the other things. But these things can also become extremely complicated and extremely detailed. And this is where humans, we need humans. What then happens to this data is that each cluster that's identified is then taken into the backend of the scientists through the MMOS pipeline. It is then further analyzed, and we get sent more detailed, more kind of finer detailed data that the players can then further analyze. So by doing this, we're actually expediting the whole process. For scientists, this process of going through each image like this and kind of stepping deeper and deeper and deeper takes around 1 hour per image sample. And for each human, we're talking about hundreds, even thousands of these samples. So actually getting, a massive amount of players chopping at this really, really expedites the process. This type of work is also incredibly important now that we have vaccines coming online to actually measure the effectiveness of the vaccines. And one of the beauties here that the scientists have talked about is that because for EVE players, the vaccine and actually getting vaccine to market is not a primary objective. That is not our primary goal. So this becomes a really handy tool to get a pretty agnostic view of the efficiency of these vaccinations. So, it wouldn't surprise me if the next batch of data that we get will actually, use these vaccination data. So the results so far, this project has been live since June 15. So the development cycle of the COVID project for ProtoDiscovery was incredibly fast from beginning of March when we sent out the message, and we shipped it June 15th. So massive kudos to the team that worked on it. Really fantastic work. But the reception has been absolutely fantastic. This project has blown the other two completely out of the waters. Since June 15th, we have around 59.6 million submissions done by over 218,000 players. So really, 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 really important. And if we say that each submission takes around 30 seconds to solve, we calculated that this is around 170 years of human interaction that has already been put into the game. So this is a massive, massive benefit for the scientific community. So I wanted to give you kind of, a loose snippet or like a high-level overview of what we've been doing with ProtoDiscovery. What we're basically trying to do here is we're trying to merge these two worlds for a greater good. Here you can see, the wonderful Nobel laureate Michel Mayer in the red shirt, who is the professor of University of Geneva, talking to Max Singularity, who is the Amar Pope. Amar is one of our races in EVE, and he is the Pope of that empire. In real life, he actually works for NASA for building space rockets. But this is just such a beautiful image to show kind of how when you blend these two worlds, wonderful things can happen. And by doing this, we hope to set example for many other successful collaborations between science and gaming to come. And this is a wonderful project. This is a really meaningful project. This is a very exciting project. And thank you.
Thank you very much, Bergur, today with us from Iceland. Thank you very much. That was impressive to see how you combine these two worlds, the scientific world and the world of gaming, a real cross-innovation. And I was very impressed that you said once that your work also had effects on how the scientists are working. Is that right? Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because this is one of the beauties about this project, is that we're connecting completely different mindsets and approaches to working. So we learned a lot from working with scientists and universities, like things go slower, things have to be a little bit, more thought out before kind of diving into things. I mean, we're just idiot game developers. We just jump in and do it and hope for the best. But being able to inspire the scientists and making their lives better is absolutely fantastic, because, I mean, it's no lie. They inspire us a lot, and they push the boundaries of what we can do way further.
Right, that's really how cross-innovation is supposed to be. So you're a kind of best practice example. Thank you very much. And impressive numbers of players, of course, which you also need to have an effect. How can we play now, or everyone who is interested out there? Where do we play?
So everyone, of course, can go to eveonline.com and download EVE and start playing. ProtoDiscovery is only a tiny fraction of EVE. And there's a lot more that you can do and explore. And eveonline.com, spin up a character, and I see you in space.
Thank you very much. We will check it out and see you in space. Thank you very much, Bergur, in Iceland. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.